Hello and welcome all. You have reached the Wharton Executive Education Future of Work, Leading Modern Workplaces, an overview webinar. My name is Kai Jarda and I'll be moderating the session with you today. So with us today, our keynote speaker, we have Andy Savaraman, who is a program leader for Emeritus and who will be your program leader during this program. Andy, you want to jump off and say hello to the crowd?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Kai. And welcome to everybody who's on this live webinar. And for those who will be watching this subsequently from their homes, I have been associated with the Wharton program through Emeritus for the last more than 1 year. In fact, I happen to be the program leader and a success coach for what is the Chief Human Resource Officers program offered by Wharton. And one of the programs as an elective that's offered within the CHRO program is this program on the future of work. A very exciting program is offered as an elective because it's so important for future leaders, both whether in senior management or as HR leaders, to really know about what the future of work portends going forward. And this program is really neat in terms of bite-sized learning, 6 different modules that cover very substantive portions of what the work place will look like in the future. And we'll dive down into that in a moment.
Wonderful. Thank you, Andy. And we'll be right back with you to go through those modules for everyone. So thanks, Andy, for taking time out of your day to be with us. So before we do that, why learn the future of work through Wharton Online? And the key reason, first reason, for those of you who don't know, the Wharton School is in fact the first collegiate business school in the entire world. It was founded in 1881. So it's been here for the longest time, for the beginning of business in Americas. Now, we expanded since then and now is known as a very broad global community here from Pennsylvania and abroad. So you'll see your classmates will come from all over the world. So to be able to have a pulse on business with regions and all over on every single continent almost when we have our enrollees is just a wealth of knowledge within the classroom, from the teachers to the students to your peers. So we're excited to offer these programs. This is one of many online programs that Wharton provides, and we are excited to have you here. For those of you who have not had a chance to make it to Pennsylvania, here's a picture of the school right here. So we warmly, virtually welcome you to the campus. Now, this is an asynchronous program where you'll be learning online and live sessions as well as recorded sessions, and you'll be working with your peers shoulder to shoulder as you're learning through this program together. And again, this is worldwide, so you'll have peers from all over the globe. And speaking about the environmental change across the nation and beyond, this is your dean, Erica James, the dean of the Wharton School. And I don't normally read off the slide, but I'm going to read this quote because I think it fits very well with the Wharton School's mission and as well as what they're doing here at the school and all of their executive education programs. So Dean James says, today's environment means you can't afford to simply respond to or manage change. The best businesses must anticipate change and even intentionally create change so as not to become complacent. At Wharton, we're excited to be the partner to help you get there. So again, it's Dean Erica James. If you haven't had a chance to go down to the school and meet her, I highly recommend that you do. So with that, I'll bring Andy back on. So Andy, you're going to go through and talk to everyone about the faculty, the staff, and the program overview. And then I'll be back on to go over the learning experience. Over to you, Andy.
My pleasure. So if we go on to the next slide, this really kind of is at the heart of why this program is so important. And from my personal experience itself, I can talk about the fact that I spent the first half of my career based out from Mumbai in India, leading HR organizations there before I moved to the US. And I led HR organizations for several different companies in different industries before moving on to the business side. And as both an HR leader and as a business leader now, I can see that the future of work and the way workforces have to be managed are so critical and at the heart of successful companies. That is why this program is so important for both HR leaders and for senior management. If you look at the fact that, and we are not even talking about COVID-based changes that have happened to the workplace. This is even prior to COVID, prior to the pandemic, and the technology advancements and the globalization have caused such significant shifts in the labor trends that is becoming more of a global and a mobile workforce, right? As technology changes, we need to kind of adapt and respond to what is out there in the marketplace. If you look at even the total gross, there are two statistics that are on this particular slide. 455 billion of projected gross volume to be created by the gig economy by 2023, which is next year. And this is an economy that simply did not exist even 4 or 5 years ago, before the advent of companies like Uber or Airbnb that have been so super successful that they have in a way disrupted the traditional businesses that were there, but they did not kill those businesses. It's not as if medallion taxi services or the hotel industry does not survive anymore. They actually continue to thrive, but a completely different genre of industry has now emerged. It's a completely different mindset of employees, the way the work is contracted or engaged with those employees, and that's becoming, it's $455 billion of revenue today, and by 2023, and this is expected to triple in the next 5 years. If you look at the next one, 55% of the workforce that is there today is probably incapable of adapting to the new world of work. Now, this statistics can change by industry segment, and I come from an IT services background where I know that in the companies that I'd worked for before, probably 60 to 80% of the workforce that exists today in those companies are seen as non-fungible, non-trainable, and their skills cannot be upgraded or transferred, which means a lot of employees in those companies have to really figure out, can they exist in those companies unless they massively reinvent themselves in terms of reskilling, retraining, or they're going to get substituted either by automation or by other employees who are going to be new to that workforce. So this is a real critical issue that's facing most business leaders head on. And the reason why this program is important for company leaders and for HR leaders to really get their hands around is to really pause and ponder to think, where are they today as a business? And in the next 3-5 years, how is that business going to be? And how will they hire people who will be successful in driving those businesses successfully forward? Can you go to the next slide, please? And we have a very impressive faculty, that is anchoring this program. As I said before, I am part of the Chief Human Resource Officer program offered by Wharton and by Emeritus. I'm a program leader and a success coach for that program. It runs over 12 months, and it's got a very impressive faculty, including Professor John McDuffie. And if you see Professor McDuffie's profile, apart from being a professor of management at the Wharton School, he really is involved in some very cutting-edge technology initiatives, including the program on vehicle and mobility innovation. So his background has heavily been around automotive and how even the automotive industry has been evolving into not only the future of work, but into the future of technology, in the future of innovation, so to speak. And from hydrocarbon powered gasoline engines for automotive cars, we're now looking at EVs, electric vehicles, right? And electric vehicles are now going to even transform into driverless vehicles. So when we talk about employability and talent in the workforce, if you were a mechanical engineer specializing in hydrocarbon technology before, the skill sets that are going to be required in the future are people who understand robotics, who understand electric vehicles, who understand battery power. In fact, going forward, it'll be engineers who understand driverless autonomous vehicle itself. So the transformation there is so dramatic that somebody like Professor McDuffie, who threads both management and organization behavior to technology innovations in automotive, into driverless vehicles, into the future of both vehicles and work, is really profound to have such a great professor in the program. Besides that, since I've had the opportunity to both engage with Professor McDuffie, as also a lot of the courses that he has delivered for the CHRO program, absolutely phenomenal professor in terms of his articulation, in terms of his body of research, body of knowledge, and the way he kind of presents concepts to make it very relatable and very relevant for the participants of a program. Can we go to the next faculty profile, please? As you will see, there are 4 faculty members who anchor this particular program on the future of work. And each of them is obviously brilliant. They're all professors at Wharton, and each of them comes from a completely different perspective. And in the case of Professor Hernandez, as you can see, His research interests include global networks, immigration, mergers, acquisitions, and knowledge management. So while Professor McDuffie looks at innovation and automation and vehicles and how vehicles are transforming as a product and what that would mean for employability in the automotive industry itself, what Professor Hernandez brings to the table is the fact that there are now global networks. Work is being done on a global basis, and immigration and cross migrations is a big theme for companies large and small. And we'll come to that a little later. Let's talk about the next faculty in this program. And Professor Prasanna Tambe is again extremely impressive, both in terms of his body of knowledge, his background, his articulation, and how he talks about data analytics. His area of specialization is data science, and how data analytics and artificial intelligence in the sphere of HR is going to be extremely powerful in the future of work. He's got a terrific book, The Talent Equation, and the big data lessons for navigating the skills gap and building a competitive workforce. So a lot of his research is based on job engines, search engines, where you find a lot of talent that's available. And how do you make sure that when you are hiring talent online to meet the big talent shortage and the talent war that's ongoing right now, you make sure that AI is not a force for negative, but it's actually a force for good, for building a better organization and a better future for these companies. And the last program faculty in this program is, if you can go to the next slide, is Professor Cameron. And if you see that her interest is about compensation and benefits and how the gig economy is going to reshape the entire workforce, and how do you have contracts with employees who are all going to be on variable pay, short-term job contracts, and how machine learning is going to affect work and the workers of the future. So as we are all currently very used to the normal employment contracts, there's a program on executive compensation or just pure compensation, which is the standard old compensation that we are used to. But in the future, when you're talking about short-term employment, the gig economy, where there are contract workers that come into your organization for short periods of time, but for very, very specific needs, how do those employment contracts become different? How do you assess those work performances or the work outputs? How do you measure them? And the impact of that in terms of both organizational work and on the employees itself. So again, a very, very different perspective to the future of work from another faculty at Wharton. Let's dive down into actually what are the takeaways going to be from this program. When you come to the future of work program, what can you expect to learn at the end of this program, which is in the next slide. So here is what you can expect. It's a 6-week program. And at the end of the 6 weeks, there is going to be a tremendous amount of learning into where you are currently today, trying to map where you are, how do you go from here to the future that you would like it to be, and then how do you kind of blend all of this into a very crisp, very tightly run program. So the first thing is to discover the trends that are there in the marketplace and in the labor market that you may be overlooking. There are lots of things that are right under our nose that we miss out. And the biggest and the most important challenge for management is to really understand what the current situation is and what is the future going to be, and how do you take your organization from the here and now to the future that you want to be part of. The program analyzes the 8 forces that affect the current state of work, and we'll come to the 8 forces in a minute, and to forecast their potential impact on your organization. And this program addresses all kinds of companies. From the cohort participants are from all over the world. They are from publicly traded companies, large global companies, smaller companies. Some of them are founder-led, some of them are mom and pop type companies. But the 8 forces that are being talked about here are equally applicable to all sizes and all types of organization. You could be a Marriott, a global organization. You could be a Subway, that's again a global organization. Or you could be a bakery down the street that employs only 20 people, or a restaurant that employs only 30 people. But in all those cases, understanding the 8 forces that are currently likely to impact the future of work is very, very critical. And then conceptualizing your existing or your forthcoming strategies to harness the talents of a global and a mobile workforce. Your workforce is going to be global in the sense that There might be people that you're hiring, even if the nature of your organization is purely local, you're only in Detroit or only in New York City or only in Berlin, but you might end up hiring people just for reasons of lack of labor. You might be hiring people who are new to your particular location. There is a huge global workforce that is going from one part of the world to another. And the workforce is equally mobile in the sense that in the past, people were born and they worked and they retired from the same location, and the place of work was in the same location itself. Many of them worked, from entry point to retirement in the one single organization itself. That's no longer the situation right now, and it's important to kind of really look through all these different modules that are there. So the program actually has 6 different modules. And if you were to look at each of the modules uniquely and separately, the first module is the current state of work. And this module really kind of gives you a glimpse of the 8 major forces that are impacting the present day workplace, even if they're not currently impacting your particular organization. If they don't do so today, chances are very soon it will be impacting you, and you might not even be aware that this is one of the important issues or the uh, forces that are likely to impact your organization. It's important to discover what are the trends in the current state of work that you might be missing out, and then deciding what are the opportunities and the pain points of these uh, forces that are at play in your organization, in the time frame in which these 8 forces may impact your organization, and identify what does your organization need to learn to be ready for the future. So let me just briefly kind of touch upon the 8 forces that have been identified in this program, and they are like a catch-all. There might be some outside of these, but broadly, the 8 forces that might impact your organization are: number one, the skills gap and the changing labor markets. Number two, automation driven by innovation and technology changes. Number three, demographics. Number four, employee expectations. And these employee expectations can translate itself into employee engagement or lack of. Number five, your workplace itself, and consider evolving models of the work, including work from home or even work from anywhere. Number six, the employment models, and which is where I talked about the fact that you have to explore newer employment models because it will include gig work and shamrock kind of organizations. Number seven, machine learning and AI. Okay, you have to gain insights into how AI and machine learning are impacting the current nature of the workforce. And the last, which is at the heart of a lot of HR systems, which is artificial intelligence in recruitment. How does AI become integrated into recruitment and talent management strategies themselves? So these are the 6 takeaways from module 1. Let's skip on to the next slide, which talks more about module 2. Now, in module 2, we talk about global and the mobile workforce itself. It talks about the trends of globalization and why that is really important, the role of migration in creating a global and mobile workforce. Now, think about it very simplistically. It has got a lot to do with demographics itself, in the sense that, as we said, one of the 8 big factors is demographics. And why is that important? In a lot of Western advanced countries, whether it's North America, whether it's Europe, whether it's Japan, the demographics is such that there is a declining population. Into the birth rates are falling, and there's a declining population. And with an aging workforce, you just don't have the number of people in the labor force to take up every job opportunity that's opening up. Apart from the fact that there is also technology changes which requires a completely different kind of skill in the workforce itself. How do you solve those kind of problems? And the way it can be done is that the work becomes more and more global, and with a very mobile workforce. The strategies for harnessing the talents of a global and mobile workforce is something that gets highlighted in this particular module, and the benefits and the drawbacks and the strategies of remote work. Because more and more you see post pandemic, especially, that there are a lot of people who have now become more productive working remotely and working from anywhere, so to speak. There's not been a loss of productivity, but the issue that companies are grappling with is that how do you create a common culture across the organization when your employees work remote? How do you make sure that employees still feel part of that company, and you are able to kind of retain and engage the employees for a longer period of time? Otherwise, if there's no connectivity with the mothership, you might have employees who are turning over very frequently, and attrition is a big problem that is being experienced today. Can we go to the next slide, module 3, please? This is a very, very important module on reskilling the future, because as we talked about, there is a tremendous amount of innovation and technology changes that are happening that are disrupting the workplace. And the extent to which the worst case scenarios about automation can be thought about. We distinguish between skill-based and task-based hypothesis, in the sense that there are a lot of jobs that are purely task-based, and the task-based jobs are things that are ripe for automation, and there can be bots that can actually do a task-based job. For example, if it is work that can be done remote and it is to be processing work, healthcare processing, call center work that can be processed from an off-site location. Those are things that a bot can take over, but there are lots of roles that are skill-based, wherein those skills can get obsolete extremely quickly. And there are skills that get obsolete in 6 months or a year from now. And you need people who can be upskilled and who can be trained to take up those roles for the future. So here is where the choices that you have to make versus the choices that you're currently making insofar as the technology that you currently have or the automation that you're planning to have. What kind of roles, what kind of jobs do you think will stay the course in the future? Will that require upskilling? And the wages that are concerned in the organization, because some of the skills that you require are so hard to find that those skills are in extremely high demand. There are not enough people with those skills, and you are in a bidding contest to even hire those people wherever they might be located at this point of time. Here is a point to kind of pause and look at the backstory of your own organization, and how do you assess the conclusions about the skill gaps that your current organization is currently facing and the decisions that you might have to make in terms of filling those positions for the future, right? In module 4, we talk about AI and automation in the workforce. Now, identify the organizational problems that are really well suited for machine learning solutions. Like I spoke just now, there are some roles and some positions. It can be like a medical transcribing work. It can be about digitizing some work. It can be very standard work where even for, say, HR back office, it's a very, very common thing that you are going online and you are asking for a request, maybe password reset, maybe how many vacation hours do I have, maybe requesting for a copy of your pay stub. Now, currently, maybe in your organization, there is a physical person either on site at your work location or maybe at a different work location or maybe contracted out to a third party, but it's a physical person who's responding to those requests. And these can all be automated by technology. There can be a bot that takes your request and kind of comes back to you with the information that you have requested within minutes, if not in seconds. It doesn't require human intervention, but there are lots of issues wherein it requires some amount of intervention and highly skilled intervention to that extent. There are lots of solutions that are either called no code, as in there's no programming that's required, or low code. But all of those are generated by humans that are extremely sophisticated in generating that kind of solution. And those are the ones that require a lot of artificial intelligence to be baked in. Identify the jobs which most likely will be impacted by AI and forecast the effect of the AI on the workforce. And what this alludes to is the fact that if you're going to be doing a lot of artificial intelligence and automation, it has a direct impact on the number of employees that you need going forward. Instead of the 10,000 employees that you have today, you might triple your revenues and your profits over the next 5 years, but probably you don't have to triple your headcount. You might be doing the same amount of work with probably just 20% increase in the headcount. But those 20% increase in the headcount will be super specialized skills, very hard to find skills, and you might not even be able to find them in the market. So are you going to buy those skills? Are you going to build those skills in-house? Or are you going to borrow those skills from a third-party organization? So those are the kind of decisions that have to be made at every step of the way as you go down this journey. Recognize the workplace challenges of algorithmic management. When you have AI that is running a lot of your operations and a lot of your decision making, there are impacts to that on the social well-being of the employees that are there. How do you make sure that those kind of things are also addressed, and the policy interventions that are required to address AI-induced job loss? Like I said, if you're going to triple your headcount, but you're only going to increase, triple your revenues and your profit, but you're going to increase headcount by only 10%, chances are that even in your core existing organization, there are lots of employees who are not fungible or who cannot be upskilled. And you might need to kind of release a lot of employees as you hire new employees. And those are the kind of policy interventions that you'll have to kind of think through. How do you handle those interventions logically, proactively, and very humanely? Can we go to the next slide, please, on module 5 and 6? So module 5 talks about emerging employment models and performance management. And we alluded to the fact that more and more going forward, you might not be hiring as many full-time employees because the skills that are required are not are likely to become obsolete very, very quickly. You don't want to hire full-time employees with long-term contracts or lifelong commitments when the skill itself is extremely transitory. There will be a lot of gig employment, there will be a lot of contract employment, wherein you're hiring SMEs, subject matter experts or knowledge experts, or people who can just do a task. For example, when you're talking about gig economy today, something which is very relatable is, say, Uber drivers, or say the person who's coming and delivering groceries to you at your doorstep. Now, those are task-based kind of stuff, and you are hiring a gig-based contract employee for a certain task and for a certain period of time. Likewise, even when you're developing an AI code, you need some experts and you need expertise to develop that code. But beyond of that, you might not require them. So all your employment models and your employment contracts are going to look completely different from how they look at this point of time. There is going to be some amount of regulatory environment. And even as we speak right now, Uber has a lot of cases going on with state governments or with countries, whether they're contractors, whether they're drivers or employees, or whether they're contractors. And all that might play out in the future. And as they play out, we might need to kind of rethink how our employment contracts with employees, contractors, gig employees are going to look like. Likewise with performance management. Today, we have very standard performance management systems for full-time employees. But if you look at Uber or if you look at Airbnb, they do have some parameters of managing the performance of their gig employees or their contractors or their landlords. And it goes by user feedback. Every time you take an Uber ride or you stay at an Airbnb, you're giving a review, and that review decides whether the company, Uber, Airbnb, or whichever of these companies in the new economy are going to decide whether they retain those contractors or the landlords or not. And those are the kind of things that we need to kind of proactively think about, because a higher percentage of our workforce going forward may not be full-time. They may be contract, they may be gig, or they might be other models that are emerging, is what Module 5 talks about. And then in Module 6, we really pause to think about data science and artificial intelligence in recruitment. And this is what Professor Tambe specializes in. And it's a huge area that we need to kind of really think through, because this is the heart of what is HR intervention all about. AI being integrated into HR processes has both advantages of algorithmic hiring as also disadvantages of biases that could be inbuilt. For example, when you do AI-based recruitment, it is a lot more easier to recruit. Your funnel becomes much more efficient. Out of the thousands of people who are applying for a position in your company, you can actually reduce it down to 10 or 5 or even 3 based on the kind of parameters that you put in your search filters. But at the same time, the algorithm is actually being devised by people who are kind of deciding what are the parameters, what are the filters that you're going to decide on the final candidates that you even want to consider. And there can be a lot of bias that can be built in based on what is going into those algorithms. Are you kind of giving equal opportunity to people of diversity, of gender? Is there equity that's being built in? Is there inclusion that is being built in, and so on? It's a very important area, because companies can be opened up to discriminatory lawsuits if your algorithms and if your AI is not completely taking care of all the kind of issues that are important to your company. Likewise, data privacy becomes a big concern, because the more and more the data is sitting in your system, on your servers, even whether it's outsourced or whether it's in-source, these data is very personal data about people, about their birthdays, about their social security numbers, about their medical history, their privacy, and so on. If any of this gets compromised, there can be big challenges for the company. And this is not only at the level of the HR head, these are issues on which CEOs of companies and the boards of companies have had to kind of uh, make uh, make amends based on the fact that these are considered very important from a regulatory standpoint. And in the big picture, what does it mean to have AI in HR, both for opportunity and inequality? Because this is a catch-all kind of a situation. When you have data science and AI, both in HR and specifically in recruiting and in performance management systems, there's a big upside in terms of making sure that a lot of biases are being removed. At the same time, there are some inbuilt biases that you have to kind of really systematically make sure that whether it's your ESG strategy, which is environment, sustainability, and governance strategy, and your DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, are all of them being adequately taken care of in the models that you're building for your organization. So these really become the core models, the 6 models that you will be experiencing within the program. And what the program also tries to do is that the trends in the future of work, you try to thread all the learnings from across the 6 modules into one final project that you kind of submit. And in the final project, what you do is you develop a proposal by reimagining the current state of work in your organization based on the identified opportunity for improvement that you decide. You decide, is there an opportunity for improvement in my current organization or in a hypothetical organization? You look at all the learnings from across the 6 modules, including those 8 forces at work. And then through the lens of the 8 major forces that are discussed in this program, your project will help summarize the course learnings in a very practical, very specific way, allowing you to walk away with a tangible plan to present to your colleagues or to your organization, or as self-learning for yourself itself. So at the end of the 6 weeks, you have a takeaway, which is a final project that you build for yourself, which really threads the learning across all the 6 modules of the program. And it kind of also bakes in the 8 major forces that are highlighted in the program. And you are able to identify one opportunity and look at that opportunity through the lens of all the major forces that are talked about in the program. So it's a very cool way of articulating a value proposition to whoever that you may want to present the learnings of this program, but at the same time, reiterating the learnings from the program into one final project that you have put together as a final deliverable at the end of 6 weeks. So that in a nutshell is what this program will help you kind of develop in terms of learning and in terms of takeaway at the end of the 6 modules. Can you go to the next slide? And this is about the program experience itself.
Thank you so much, Andy, for going through that all with everyone. I'm going to take a moment to go through the learning experience. Here's a slide deck that's showing just a few of how we're breaking this down to us, breaking it down for you, from the live office hours, for the fireside chats. We're going to have tons of industry examples, assignments, polls, reflections, and discussions boards. But our pedagogy here is that we all know that you're busy professionals, busy CEOs, that we want you to be able to have that bite-sized learning at your fingertips. Okay. So it is a 4 to 6 hour commitment per week, about 6 weeks of content, as we just went through that with you all. Again, a variation of assignments and quizzes. And correct me if I'm wrong, Andy. Andy will be the one working closely with you on your assignments and giving you feedback on that. And of course, frequent course communication with your program leader. Is that right, Andy?
Yes, there will be a program leader who works with the cohort on a week-to-week basis. And the program leader does have a weekly, it's called a live session, wherein regardless of which part of the world you are, which geography, which city, there is a live session hosted by the program leader every week during the program, wherein the learnings from the prior week is summarized, is talked about. There's a lot of direct ability to engage with the program leader, so that it's not just an online program where you're watching videos and where you're doing assignments at home, but the program leader is like your tutor, and you have live engagement with the program leader. It's a 1 hour session every week, and the program leader kind of walks you through the prior week's session, the takeaways from the prior week. if you have any questions that you might want to articulate during that session, you're free to do that, and the program leader helps you with feedback and content. And for those who are not able to join the live session, all those sessions are recorded so that whenever you want, you can log in onto the Canvas platform on the Emeritus platform, and you will be able to view the live session because it's recorded and it's posted. Though you might not be there in person, you'll be able to see what other participants of that session interacted with the program leader, the Q&A that was there, and so on. And what the program leader also does is that while your weekly submissions are graded and reviewed, and you have comments come back to you from different graders at the back end, your final project is actually that you submit, which kind of threads the learning from across the 6 modules, is actually reviewed, and you get feedback and comments from your program leader.
Wonderful. Thank you for clarifying that with us, Andy. And this is a great note to mention this too. For those of you who are here watching this recording at home, this would very much look like what you'd be doing if you missed that live session. So if you do have questions now, practice what it would be like. Send in your questions. I'm going to give you information in just a minute about how you can send those over to our PAs. We're going to be on that screen soon. But if you're watching this at home, please interact with us, and we'll tell you how to do that in just a moment. Okay, so upon successful completion of the program, you will receive a certificate that looks just like this from the Wharton School. Great way to advertise on your LinkedIn, social media. Of course, add this to your resume. And then here we have the Apply Now page. So this is where if you are ready to apply and you are all set, you can click here. If you're watching this from home, you can't click on it because we're in webinar form, but you will have the slide deck sent out with you, and you can click on the PowerPoint from there. For those of you who are in the room with us right now, and just drop the bit.ly into the chat, and you can click on that link right there, and that will take you to the page that we're looking at right now. And for those of you who are at home, you got this email to you. Our program advisors are online with us right now. They can answer any logistical questions. As we've mentioned before, this is a global program, so folks are coming from all over the world, different time zones. If you have questions about the logisticals, that's a great question for your program advisor, who you can reach by email at wharton@emeritus.org, or you can click on the bit.ly that's in the chat. And again, those of you who are watching from home, you can respond right to the email that you'll be receiving to us about the program. Such an interesting topic to be talking about, Andy, with the shape and change of the workforce, especially my ears perked up even more when you started talking about DoorDash and Uber and all those drivers. I myself Airbnb as well. I'm a super host. Excited. And but I did go through a moment where I had a flood in my basement. And it happened right before guests came in. And I was away in Tennessee during Corona. I had a property manager managing my property. Property manager did not get back to me in time. And I had not one, but 3 guests in a row stay in my place, and they were not satisfied. I got my first ever 3-star ratings. And I got an email from Airbnb saying, hey, if you don't fix your ratings, we're going to take away your hosting capabilities. And that was a big shock to me. So I'd like to maybe, what do you say to folks who are in my position, and how would you, when you have, I'm a contractor as the employer, right? The manager, the landlord for Airbnb, but then I hired a third party to watch my place. How could someone like me have contracted them to get a better rating of that property manager who was watching my house? And then I ended up getting Airbnb didn't talk to the property manager. I'm still the one responsible, even though it wasn't me that was watching the house.
And that's a great question, because what applied in your case as an individual landlord contracting out your housekeeping services to a third party, but Uber being the company that's paying guests to the residents coming in there, is very similar in terms of a model to companies that outsource some parts of their work to a partner company, and the partner company in turn subcontracts some part of the resources or work to their partners, and so on. So it goes down the chain, right? But eventually, who's on the hook here? The company, the end customer company is on the hook to providing that service, whether to their employees or to their clients, and so on. So which is why it becomes very, very important that management and HR leaders are very careful about who is it that they pick in terms of they're deciding to work with, whether the party, the contracting company that they hired in the first place. And oftentimes they have contracts that say, you will not subcontract any of the services that you have committed or promised to provide to us without our express permission and without our approval also. right? So the contracting company is then on the hook to make sure that all services is provided by their own full-time employees, not by their contractors and not by third parties that they decide to engage. And if they do that, they have to go back to their client and make sure that they have permission to do that. That's a way for the company, the end client, to make sure that they selected a partner based on a lot of due diligence, and the partner has committed that they have the resources, they have the people, they have the facility, or whatever is the service that they are offering to be selected for that particular program. And in case they want to kind of contract out or subcontract any portions of what they're providing to their end client, it has to be with consent and due diligence by the end client itself. And it becomes more and more difficult when you're talking about a gig economy, when you're talking about all your services being rendered by contractors, right? Like in the case of an Uber, or like in the case of Airbnb, or even other services that are coming up right now. In all these cases, it becomes super important for the end company, the Uber or the DoorDash and so on, to have a very strong operations team that are looking at all these things, because at the end of the day, it's it's every customer touch point is a moment in time for them. One negative review, and that can kind of have a cascading effect for them also. So in the case of to go back to your specific question, if you knew that there was a flood in your apartment, and if you knew that it is not something that you can rely on the third party subcontractor who was going to fix it, better to kind of take a loss at that point of time than kind of take a negative feedback uh, from the guests who are staying at your property, or from Uber, who's the company that's kind of providing you that service. But there were a couple of other great questions that had come up, in the course of both the CHRO program and in the Future of Work program in the prior episodes, prior editions. And the first one was, is this program something that's relevant for companies of any size? Okay, is this program really important for those large technology companies, the large banks, the global manufacturing companies that have a global presence, for whom innovation and disruption and automation and immigration and globalization, all that makes sense? Or does it also apply to a small company, to a company that's only local to, say, Detroit, Michigan, or to Mumbai, India, or to Shanghai, China, and so on? Does it apply to a mom and pop company? And the across the board answer is yes. This is something that, whether you are a startup company today, whether you are a technology company, or you're a bakery, or whether you're a restaurant, or whether you are in shipping and transportation, or you're a warehouse, you really need to know what's the writing on the wall from a future perspective. How is the future of work going to change? How is technology going to change the future? And how do you align yourself with what's going to be out there? Because if you don't read the writing on the wall, you'll become a roadkill on the information highway to the future. And even a small company has to make those small tweaks. And COVID was a great learning in that, right? Whether you are a Marriott, whether you are a hospital chain, whether you're a manufacturing company, or you were a Starbucks store down the street, all of them had to practice the same elemental rules of social distancing, masking, making sure that their employees are safe, their customers are safe. Otherwise, they couldn't do business. And making sure that they were able to kind of turn on a dime and kind of completely outfit their facility, including with those polythene sheets, including providing masks, providing pickup and drop services, and so on. So it's very important for companies of any size, any shape, to be aware of what's coming, what's out there, and how is technology changing the future, and how is society changing and responding to what's happening in terms of innovation, disruption, and the changes to the workplace. There's a very interesting theme within this program about the fact that typically one would assume that technological changes are always going to disrupt society, and society has no ability to kind of align itself. Think about the horse and buggy getting, becoming a historical artifact with the invention of the automobile. And now the automobile itself might have a lot of changes coming in because of driverless cars. You don't need a driver anymore. And then who knows what's the next after driverless cars also. But the very interesting aspect that the professors really bring to life is that it is not necessarily that only technology, innovation, and disruption will change society. Society can actually proactively kind of pause and think about what parts of technology and what parts of innovation do they want to adopt, embrace, and how do they kind of make it very seamless so that there is the least impact on the people that will actually get impacted with that, whether it's their employees, whether they're customers or society at large. So how you embrace technology and how you kind of integrate it into your workspace, into your work life, into your organizations has a big component of how it becomes seamless and how it gets adopted for the overall good both of the organization and of the community itself. So that's one point that I think module 2 or module 3 really touches upon very effectively. There was another question that has always come up that given the fact that the cohort is global, is it equally efficient and equally pragmatic for all participants, regardless of which part of the world that they are joining from? And the answer is an absolute yes, because this program is also offered as an elective to the CHRO program, the Chief Human Resource Officer program, which is a one-year program offered by Emeritus and Wharton. And that program has 3 electives that participants can take, and the future of work is one of the electives. And the CHRO program itself, 50% of the participants are from the US, and the other 50 are from Europe, from Middle East, from Asia Pacific, from Australia, New Zealand, and so on. And we find that the participants from overseas are equally engaged, find equal value, not only in the CHRO program, but absolute value from the future of work elective that they take, which is the program that we are talking about right now. The other important thing to note is that while there are a lot of cases that are talked about, this is not just a theoretical program, because this is real. This is life. This is about our work and how work will happen in the future. The professors actually talk about very relatable and relevant examples. And there are cases that they talk about from Google. And you learn about how Google uses very detailed search data to determine which candidates to target during the hiring process itself, because everybody wants to work for Google, so to speak, right? So they get a ton of resumes against every job posting that they do. And they use very detailed search data to determine how do candidates get targeted in the hiring process. And Google today has a footprint and a presence, not only in the US, but in several countries in Europe, in Asia Pacific, and so on. So, and it's a global brand. So you get to learn how Google does it. Then there are case studies from GitHub, and GitHub is more of a technology company. There's another company that they talk about called Zapier, Zapier. And the reason why they talk about GitHub and Zapier is that you get insights how various remote-only organizations, because in these 2 companies, they don't have a physical head office or a main office. All their employees work remote, and they work not only from remote locations in the US, but notionally you could be working from any part of the world. You could be working from Paris, from Sydney, from Delhi, from Shanghai, from Singapore, and so on. So they get insights from how various remote-only organizations are working and create a use case for how you can approach managing work teams and conflicts at work if it was an all virtual environment, because more and more now employees want the flexibility of working from home, working remote, or working from anywhere. And some of the very high skilled, high talented employees are so scarce, and there's such a scarcity of those talents, and they're so much in demand that you might have to accommodate their need for working remote. And then how do you manage such work teams globally and work conflicts that come up? And this is not just post-COVID, even before. If you think about large global programs, or say Boeing or any manufacturing company, they have head offices and manufacturing organizations in the US. They have R&D and research and design teams in India, in Europe, in China. They have sourcing capabilities of components and parts that are happening from globally. And all of them get assembled and brought together in Europe, in the US, and elsewhere in the world. So how do you kind of manage remote work and conflicts in an all virtual environment is the reason why they take examples from GitHub and Zapier. And there's a company called KNACK, K-N-A-C-K, that they talk about. And this is a tech company, and they use video game behavior and performances to assess candidates' personality profiles. So as you are trying to hire employees into your company, or even when you're trying to promote them into leadership position, apart from everything else that we were doing in the past, this company uses video game behavior and performance to really assess, are these the right people to hire into the company in the first place? and to promote them? Are they the right persona to promote them? So there is so much of technology intervention that is happening that the scope of work, the world of work is going to be so different that even giving examples of Google in terms of hiring, for GitHub in terms of remote work and remote virtual environments, or NAC in terms of assessing candidates' personality traits and profile from their video game behavior and their performances is just so different than what we have ever thought about before, that it's important for HR leaders and for management to know these are the options that you have going into the future. So, these are some very common questions that I've heard from both CHRO participants and participants of the Future of Work program before.
And thank you so much, Andy, for all that. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email us. We can get those questions over to you. Again, for those of you who are in the room, you can click on the bit.ly. Okay. But with that, we are coming to the end of a close. Again, we welcome all questions in any form, whether you give us a call or email us, and we will get right back to you. The class is starting right around the corner, and we look forward to seeing you in class. But before we sign off, Andy, any last final words you'd like to say to our audience, or any words of wisdom to the folks who are considering joining?
Oh, it's an absolutely exciting program, great faculty, great material, great content. And this would be a program that I'm sure people would enjoy being part of. And I look forward to seeing the next cohort of participants enrolling into this program.
All right. Same. Thank you, Andy. Again, we are so appreciative of you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. And thank you all for those who were able to join with us. We appreciate you being here.
There is one question that I think about if I want to take this program, Future of Work, but also the CHRO next year, what would be the recommendation? And I would say that, it kind of jumpstarts her in the sense that this is an elective for the CHRO program. And if you do this program standalone at this point of time, it will count as one of the 3 electives that you are required to do as part of the CHRO program for completion and for certification of the CHRO program. So you could do this program now, and it will count as one of the 3 electives that you're required to do for the CHRO program.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andy. And again, for those of you who are at home watching this live again, you're going to have questions and we welcome them. So please don't hesitate. Maybe write down your questions on paper so you can send it over to us. So again, thank you, Andy, and Kit and team in the background. Thank you so much for all your help there. And we appreciate you all. And we wish you a warm good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. See you in class.
See you all.